the legacy of the past still haunts parts of the Pacific.
So it's a serious issue that the Americans need to look at.
In Solomon Islands, Beijing is building new healthcare facilities.
What China is doing is creating maybe a new path that our traditional partners can assist.
But in Fiji, some Chinese companies have hit obstacles.
I don't reply to the criticism of media. This building is just to bring friendship, and a good landmark for Fiji.
Environmental damage is resulting in penalties and resentment.
I sincerely hope that the fine is a deterrent.
Traditional allies are stepping up their presence, including with military assistance.
So the investment that is going to the naval infrastructure in Suva and the Black Rock infrastructure in Nadi is clearly an attempt to keep China at bay.
But New Zealand thinks cultural ties are its big advantage over Beijing.
China themselves have acknowledged that they've got a lot to learn from us.
The Pacific is getting attention from friends old and new. Will it be enough? On a hilltop above the capital of Solomon Islands, the US built a memorial marking the battles of World War II. Honiara is on the island of Guadalcanal. It's still littered with the wrecks of planes and ships. They're a big attraction for divers, but back on land, there's a more insidious legacy. Isaiah and his 12-year-old son Senri live in a relatively new neighborhood where children are finding strange objects buried in the ground. Senri uncovered one while playing and saw a small propeller. It turned out to be part of an American white phosphorus mortar.
Mi pulim ko buat fire outcome na. Tam fire outcome na din mi seke buat fire bonim first time bonne kamlo trasis blomi den bonne kamap na. Den tam mi semi wipim dai mi semi wipim lo left hand blomi lo trasis na mi semi wipim bai but em touching fire am golahan blomi mo.
The danger is all around. The bomb squad recently took away another cluster of mortars.
From here to here, you see, there were 6 bombs here. Here's the back of the bomb here, and the head of the bomb is here. They are very dangerous bomb for us. Some of us may bend the bushes, and the bomb will catch it and it will explode to us and kill us.
So we want Americans and Japanese to take away these bombs because it is not ours and they will pay us compensation.
Isaiah has spent his savings on treatment, and Senri has not gone to school for a year because he's afraid of being teased.
Left hand blow me no say use him too much. Sometimes if me use him, I'm soa too. I'm little bit soa. Sometimes it's small something no, me say use him le mo simota. At a spoon me say all him no din. Bayro me say all him no, but big something was for me use him le by. I'm soa ne if me all him.
He lost every life where he got. I don't know, maybe in the future. I don't know what the future will happen to this boy.
Senri went out to the US Navy's hospital ship, Mercy, for some basic care. It's in town offering free treatment as part of a 2-week effort called Pacific Partnership. Senri receives some medicine. But Isaiah wants help to send Senri to Australia for surgery. He says he's written to US and Australian embassy officials, with no luck so far. And he's doing it by himself, after recently losing Senri's mother.
So my wife died this year and I'm on my own, so I need help. So what I want now is, may I ask whoever is responsible to assist my son to Australia and maintain his body so that he may go to school.
The head of the country's bomb squad says the search will continue in Senri's neighborhood for what's called unexploded ordnance. He estimates there are hundreds of thousands of items to clear across the country.
Averagely, each year, my team remove a total of 1,500 items. That is including bombs, projectiles, grenades, mortars, rockets.
The team is getting ready to blow up the latest batch of ordnance. It's an exercise that happens almost every week.
So this job is, is really important because it's a threat to our nation. So it's good that we established here and we go out and do our operations, removing the hazard from our local communities.
The team gets some assistance from Australia, Japan and the US. But it estimates it will take another 20 years to clear all the bombs if funding isn't increased.
Three, two, 1, 0.
There are calls for the US in particular to do more if it wants to counter growing influence from China.
If they want to be part of this country and say they call themselves friends, then they got to show up, come and do something, and show Samoan Islands that you do care about us. And the fact that this town is expanding, that means people are starting to go into undeveloped areas, and there are bombs everywhere, that you don't know where they are. And that's basically what happened to my cousin. They didn't even know where the bomb was, and they just went and put the fire right on top of it and had a barbecue. And then the thing blew up on him and killed him and his friend and injured a couple of more people. So it's a serious issue that the Americans need to look at.
While the Americans have a temporary presence offshore, China is planning something more permanent on the healthcare front. Several families are waiting for compensation before they move out of their homes. The neighborhood is being cleared to make way for a new cardiac wing at the hospital, funded by Beijing. Locals say countries like the US and Australia should pay attention.
I think it is a great initiative that China is doing. In the past, we don't get a lot of help with tertiary level infrastructure. What China is doing is creating maybe a new path that our traditional partners can assist us with, and that is assist with developing further specialist healthcare in regards to equipment and in regards to infrastructures as well.
It's a pressing need in a country where heart patients usually have to go overseas, if they can afford it. But the new project is raising concerns about long-term sustainability.
The big question is how to maintain that sort of specialist center And from my experience with the Eye Center, I've seen how tricky it can be to maintain and the capacity that the government has to maintain it. And moving forward in establishing that sort of center, we really need to have a clear direction of who's gonna fund the operational cost of it, who's gonna fund the maintenance of the equipment in it. Because if in a few years down the line there's no support or no clear sort of who's responsible for it, then in a few years' time we might just see a disaster.
As new projects multiply, China is still seen as a benefactor here. But attitudes can change. In Fiji, there are signs of pushback against some Chinese companies amid concerns over environmental damage and how locals are treated. It's hard to miss the latest addition to the skyline in Fiji's capital city. The WG Friendship Plaza is being built by a Chinese-backed company and will be the country's tallest building. It's planned to house hotel rooms and high-end condos. But the process has not been smooth. Work is getting underway again after the project was halted. COVID-19 caused delays, but so did a stop order issued over encroachment on the church property next door.
Okay. The encroachment we actually rectified by cutting the balcony off to the actual boundary line, which is been satisfied by SEC and other departments, even the church.
The project has raised questions over how such a tall building was approved in a residential neighborhood.
I don't reply to the criticism of media. We just get the job done, that's it. We want to show people we're not here to talk too much. We're just here to do our job, get it done, and let people see what's the outcome of it. This building is just to bring friendship, and a good landmark for Fiji. Everyone's saying, wherever we go, going fishing, hey, we see the tallest building. That's our guide back to the, shore. My director see good potential here, really good potential. If it wasn't good potential, why my director did come and invest here, Because we, eventually in the future, Fiji will have more high-rise building.
It's not the only Chinese-backed project to hit a snag. A prominent economist says the early years of Chinese investment in Fiji were bumpy.
So initially, the tenders for infrastructure development, particularly road construction, was given to Chinese firms, and we saw the kind of works that was done. We saw potholes appearing within few months after the construction was completed. So it was very clear that the work that was done was not good standard of work, and concerns were being raised at that time.
Morning. Sitiveni Rambuka led a coup in 1987 and, as Fiji's leader, welcomed Chinese investors. But he now expresses caution.
I was worried about the Chinese initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative around the world, and how these countries would have to pay for the debts they incurred, particularly in consideration of our strategic assets like ports and airports and such other assets. It would not be conducive to maintaining cordial relationships with our Pacific partners.
And there are questions about how much locals benefit.
We have Chinese companies working on our roads, and some of the contracts given to Chinese companies to come and build I see a lot of them coming in and working, and I also see some of our young people working with them, but not enough.
So we have seen many investments registered in Pacific Island countries, so in Fiji in particular, but the investments don't materialize. We have also seen businesses from China who come here, but one of the conditions they put down any contract is that they'll bring material and labor from China. That has been a concern in Pacific Island countries. Over time, the Chinese firms themselves have realized that it would be a good idea if they want to maintain good relationships in Pacific Island countries is to employ more local labor, and we have seen that change.
On the island of Malolo, another Chinese project is facing obstacles, this time for environmental reasons. Jonah Joseva is heading to his property, where his plans to build an eco-lodge for surfers ran into trouble. One day he arrived to find a gate blocking access to his land. A Chinese developer, FreeSoul, was starting to build a resort on an adjacent property.
So once they access their big trucks on our land to their land, then they get these big excavators. Then they start to walk on the beach. Then I came in, I told them, hey, it's our access. The land has been leased. And the problem was, I spoke with these Chinese that couldn't understand English.
The developers removed mangroves, dug a channel, and damaged the coral reef. What was once a small beach on Jonah's land is still covered in machinery. In April 2022, FreeSoul was fined almost $500,000 US. It also has to pay a bond while the damage is rectified.
If you really think about the ecology, what we have lost ecologically, it's hard to fathom that amount of money is enough to cover it. And I worry about the resilience of the whole system of the island to the impacts of climate change now that the island has lost a part of its body that would have helped in its resilience.
In Jonah's village, the locals are still upset over how they say the developers behaved.
Sandal tu kuni sumai sa tambu na tako suika, pero na maramai. Mabatay pa no serangan nila iro. Hakato sinikila na kena may tikibuta kena vaka bata sini matata na betalano. Kinta talanga sa tupuni rito sa nesa limna karto batata na mesa na na wana ni kem do matara may rot kumi kene mami ko na lairo nangari na ikana kar.
The village thought the new resort would help it economically. The man who arranged the lease with FreeSoul now thinks it was a mistake. He says the developers built him a house, which he also regrets.
It's like walking on sharp stones. You don't want to get hurt. I was so angry. I didn't like what they did. The septic tank is not yet finished. It's still there, lying down. I haven't used it. So I have found out that they are not faithful. I can say that I don't trust them anymore. There are better people who can come and build in Fiji.
It's unclear if the resort will ever be finished.
So what I've seen in the past day, they've been getting all the assets back to the mainland, like the excavators and stuff. So I think they're packing up slowly to go home. I hope they don't stay beside me. I hope they go on.
I sincerely hope that the fine is a deterrent to any foreign investors or even local investors that may think that they can get away with conducting the development without due process, without following the laws, without respecting the laws that are in place.
If the damage can be fixed, Jonah still wants to go ahead with his eco-lodge.
I think if you do the right thing, you'll finish in a good way. If you do the bad thing, not the right thing, then that's what is going on the other side. They didn't do the right thing.
On a different island, another project has locals concerned. A bauxite mine with Chinese backers has stopped operations with years left on its lease amid a market downturn. The boats that used to carry the bauxite to refineries in China sit idle. But now there's a new activity around the mine. The traditional landowners who agreed to the mining lease are not happy about the logging. One local built a fence at the entrance to what he says is his land. He claims the loggers repeatedly damaged it. The loggers have installed their own gate, which blocks one access way to his property. The mining company has not responded to questions, even to confirm if it's doing the logging. Government sources say the logging is legal, but observers say it points to a flawed interaction with the local community.
Constant dialogue, constant communication, and openness is required. We need to respect that our communities have a say in what goes on in the environment around them. While they may have leased their land, they are still, at the expiry of that lease, their children or grandchildren will still inherit the environment that we leave behind.
With Chinese efforts not always getting a friendly reception, is this a chance for traditional partners to regain favor in the Pacific? Australia is helping Fiji with its military, and New Zealand is promoting cultural ties. The battle for hearts and minds is heating up. Fiji's Black Rock military camp officially reopened in early 2022 after a multi-million-dollar upgrade. Australia outbid China to redevelop the camp, which will be a key facility in the Pacific for security training and humanitarian efforts. But there are still signs of earlier help from Beijing. The battle for influence is ongoing. The camp is almost deserted because the troops are on a training exercise in the nearby highlands. Operation Cartwheel is getting underway. The Fijians are being joined by troops from allies, the US, Britain, Australia and New Zealand. The Kiwi contingent is already here. Chinese state media later called the 11-day exercise an effort to counter China's influence in the region.
第一个原则就是，中国是不结盟的。我们是为什么不结盟？就是因为任何的盟友，之间的关系，它都是不平等的。他现在到处以这个安全为理由，强行把这些国家纳入到美国的印太战略里边。他从来不尊重这个国家，他会愿不愿意在 纳入到人家里，愿不愿意在中美之间做出这种选边站，这就是美国的一贯的这样一些做法。
On the other side of the island, in Suva, work is getting underway on a new maritime center for the Navy, funded by Australia. Some locals aren't thrilled about the size of the building in a residential neighborhood. But it's another sign of Canberra's determination to stay active in the region.
That money could have been well spent on public infrastructure, say roads, bridges, ports, etc. So the investment that has gone into the naval infrastructure in Suva and the Black Rock infrastructure in Nadi is clearly an attempt to keep China at bay, because Fiji was looking at building those infrastructure. I remember the Black Rock tender process, but I'm not sure about how the tender process was conducted and the selection was made. It's perfectly possible that it would have been a political process to select the tender rather than the economic rationale behind the tender selection.
If the battle over security escalates between China and the West, observers worry about the consequences.
When we consider that broader context of US-China competition for strategic primacy, if we start to see routine access of Chinese naval vessels or military vessels into the Pacific, it starts to securitize that space. And the freedom of movement and the open and transparent security activities that we've had up to now in the Pacific cooperation activities, I should say, it doesn't reflect the interests or the wishes of Pacific Island countries. They don't want to see a militarized Pacific. They don't want to see the Pacific become like the South China Sea.
If security is one area of competition, so are cultural ties, where traditional partners have an advantage over China. Samoa's capital is awash with flags as it celebrates 60 years of independence from New Zealand. There are still close ties, although the relationship is not picture perfect. Members of New Zealand's leading Samoan music group are in town to film a music video.
You know, everywhere we go, we have conversations with people, and they're genuinely great conversations, because it starts with, "Oh, we love your music," and then it leads on, "Oh, did you know we're family from down the line?" Because Samoa, almost everybody's related. It's so small, yeah.
Later that night, Nanai has a final get-together with old friends.
It was sad to say goodbye, but we had to come back home to our second home, New Zealand.
The group is launching a new album and is glad to be traveling back and forth again after COVID kept the countries closed to each other.
Essentially, we've been trained in music from a very, very young age, and a lot of cultural events is to do with music. Samoan music is important here in Aotearoa, in New Zealand as well, because we still practice our music culture here in New Zealand.
South Auckland is the center of Pacific life in New Zealand. It's sometimes called the world's largest Polynesian city. There are more Samoans here than in Samoa, and it has a diaspora from many other Pacific countries.
I love it. Just imagine if I were living in Singapore with no support system, you know, like Samoan communities there, you know, that I would share my culture with. I can imagine it would be very draining because you don't constantly have that infrastructure that you brought with you from Samoa. So I guess it's a perfect place to move to outside of Samoa.
This musician tries not to pay attention to international affairs.
I don't watch the news that much, don't follow the political spectrum of things, but I've seen it somewhere on social media that China's moved into the Pacific, and I don't know, I'm not an expert, if that would be a good thing or not. I mean, as far as I know, China's already existed in the Pacific. We have a lot of Chinese part Samoans, you know, in Samoa and living abroad.
The growing presence of Chinese shops and projects in Samoa and elsewhere in the Pacific has some observers talking about economic neo-colonialism. But a long-time Pacific expert says that traditional partners like New Zealand are not in the position to point fingers, considering their own failings. During the 1918 influenza epidemic, New Zealand administrators allowed a ship called the Talune to dock in Samoa, knowing there were sick people on board.
Officially, 20% of the population died in a month, but I've extensively researched it and I'm pretty sure it was much more than that. It scarred Samoa for the next 20 years and was instrumental in the development of a movement for self-government quite quickly. If there hadn't have been the influenza epidemic, and if New Zealand had just blundered along as it was going, history would have been different. But quite early in the piece, New Zealand demonstrated it wasn't capable of running another country.
There's lingering resentment over harsh treatment of migrants in the past, and how Samoans still have to apply for visas to visit New Zealand.
I have been trying to remind the New Zealanders to remember that treaty of friendship and that they should facilitate the travel passes between the two countries. I am now the leader of the opposition, and all I can do is to shout, like every opposition leaders do.
But New Zealand has been working on its relationship with the Pacific. These days, it has a government minister assigned to the region, who was himself born in Samoa.
How's Dave been?
He's been okay.
Yeah, is he keeping you out of trouble?
Yeah.
He thinks Beijing can learn from tiny New Zealand.
They are one of our development partners. It doesn't mean that we necessarily agree in all things. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will partner with them in all things, because our way and our approach, we would say, we're basing that on our learnings with the Pacific and our years of experience with the Pacific, our close family ties with the Pacific. And so China themselves have acknowledged that they've got a lot to learn from us. But these are sovereign nations, so you cannot dictate to another nation how they behave. What our constant message is to China is we've got experience, we're a trusted partner by the Pacific region, and so we'll always put our hand up about working better together.
A multi-ethnic church service in South Auckland is a microcosm of the Pacific. There are people from Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, and Kiribati. They represent countries facing challenges, ranging from economic crisis to the existential threat of climate change. The Pacific needs more than prayers. It needs help from friends old and new. How do they plan to step up? In a tiny village near Suva, Barney Dunn is paying respects to his ancestors. There used to be more than 20 graves here.
If you go and count it, you will only see about 5 or 6. So when the hurricane comes, these graves just break up and they all get buried in the sand. When I was young, the grave was on like a small hill, but now it is all water.
And as the tide comes in, even more of the past disappears from view. Barney's family has already abandoned its home by the beach. He estimates the village has lost half its land area, and the erosion is speeding up. His current home is further from the sea, but now salt water is coming up through the ground, and there's nowhere further back to move.
We cannot grow anything at this moment. Before, they used to grow cassava and bananas and bele, but right now, as we speak, we cannot grow anything. As you look around, you see only flowers. I think that's the only thing we can grow here.
Villagers are doing what they can to keep dry, but the water keeps coming.
When it's high tide, the water, before it never comes near to the house. But now, just recently, the water started coming up right to the front of the house. I'm worried because our house is down on the ground. So if I can't do anything about it, it will really come in. So that's why I have to put the coconut hut to stop the water coming inside to our compound. Maybe in 5 years' time or 4 years' time, if they continue to do that, tide is still coming up like that into our compound, our house will be underwater.
There's been talk of building a seawall or relocating the settlement if a wall proves too expensive. The villagers don't know what lies ahead.
It's heartbreaking and thinking what will happen next, and for our livelihood, and especially for the future generation, our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It's very heartbreaking to think that what will happen to this generation in future. Most people don't want to move because our ancestors are buried here also. It's heartbreaking to leave them behind and move to another place, because without them we wouldn't be here. Just because of them, that's why we are here.
Climate change is a mortal threat to low-lying island nations in the Pacific. But is the world paying attention? Headlines have been dominated by China's security pact with Solomon Islands, and there's been a flurry of diplomacy ever since. Australia's foreign minister visited Fiji just days after taking office.
Our relationship with this region and your relationship with us matters.
Well, I think it was completely over the top. The elections had been in Australia had just more or less finished. It created a sense of panic around the situation, like that some Chinese aircraft carrier was coming down the slot and would certainly be off somewhere. I have to say that Penny Wong seems to have calmed down a bit now.
At the same time, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was trying to sign up multiple Pacific countries to an economic and security deal. The trip was largely unsuccessful.
It was just kind of dumb. That's not how you operate the Pacific, and you don't treat them all the same. If you were to say to a Samoan, oh, you're the same as the Ni Vanuatuans or the Papua New Guineans, there'd be a sense of outrage. They can't even identify themselves with Tongans who are just to the south. Everybody has their own entities, and yet this fellow came through with a one-document-fits-all approach. I mean, it has to be said that, looking back on it, now the foreign minister was laughed out of the Pacific.
US President Joe Biden hosted Pacific Island leaders in Washington for a summit aimed at boosting ties. And Solomon Islands Foreign Minister Jeremiah Manelli visited his New Zealand counterpart Nanaia Mahuta in Wellington. So with all this attention, what does the Pacific really need as it faces a challenging future? One element is unity. That was threatened when Kiribati withdrew from the main regional forum in 2022 amid growing ties with China. Kiribati switched recognition from Taipei to Beijing in 2019 at the same time as Solomon Islands.
We need to keep the cohesion of the peoples of the Pacific, as well as their economic interest and their developmental interest, guided and guarded by the Pacific Island Forum. If we didn't have that, we would have a foothold for somebody else to come in, and they may destabilize that people-to-people relationship that we have had for centuries.
Another destabilizing element is mounting debt, amid the economic uncertainty that so many Pacific countries face.
They are vulnerable. Credit is not readily available domestically, so they do need to look outside. You know, some deals promoted by China looks beautiful on paper and sounds fantastic, but in actual fact are not when you really dig into the numbers and the details of contracts that people are signing. And so that becomes a concern at the risk and at the moment with COVID-19, as countries come out of the pandemic, there is a general concerns about the vulnerabilities of the small island nations.
So 3 countries that are under debt stress right now include Fiji, Samoa and Tonga. I think debt forgiveness is going to be an important issue for many Pacific Island countries as they recover.
And there's the balance to strike between traditional partners in the West and China, which is clearly in the region to stay. In late October 2022, Chinese President Xi Jinping got a historic 3rd term as head of the Communist Party. Some analysts now expect an even more assertive foreign policy.
When you're dealing with China, you're dealing with a great power. You cannot be too demanding on them. And when they offer assistance, look at both sides of that assistance. Will it do me good in the long run or not? And China will not be offended if we say, no, thank you. That's in their culture also.
Just 11 of the countries in the Pacific account for 15% of the Earth's surface. So they're likely to attract even more interest in the years ahead.
英语有句话叫 "Small is beautiful"， 小的就是美好的。这些太平洋岛国尽管面积比较小，但是海域面积还是很大的。它的区位优势，它的海洋的这样一个价值，还有包括数据啊，还有包括这个资源呐，包括这个通道啊，所以它应该要更好的挖掘它的美。所以中国的合作，或者跟澳大利亚、新西兰甚至美国一起合作，是成就这种美。
I've been to China a few times, and I met the Chinese official in China, and who, after listening to the challenges that Pacific Island countries face, particularly in terms of low economic growth, argued with me that the democracy doesn't seem to be working in Pacific Island countries because your economies aren't doing well, and that it may be time to switch to being a more autocratic governance system, because that might just help you achieve better economic growth and economic outcomes. And I mentioned that now we still need democracy, because that is the best way to achieve economic growth, and that China is an exception rather than the rule when it comes to the relationship between democracy and achieving economic outcomes.
China certainly has a role to play in the Pacific in terms of the economic cooperation that we've seen for years now. You know, it builds infrastructure, it does buy the resources that Pacific Island countries have to offer. What I'd like to see, and I think what Pacific countries would like to see, is a more equitable balance in that relationship.
A question remains. As Pacific Rim countries compete over influence and resources, will they embrace or ignore the people who live in the Pacific? And what's best for them?